I'm John McKee, and this is Building with John. In this series, we will be building an acoustic guitar. Welcome back to our guitar project. We're going to work in this episode on making the neck. Now, if you recall, our guitar body is this nice quilted walnut. So we want something that looks really nice with that. So we are going to make our neck out of this rough sawn walnut with highlights from this honey locust. And the neck we're going to make will be laminated together so that we get a racing stripe pattern similar to what's on the back of this guitar neck. Let's get to it. I'm going to add a straight edge guide so I can just get a rough cut on the table saw. So we've cut down our pieces for our neck. So I have two outside pieces that are 3/4 inches, two honey locust pieces that are 5/16, and an 1/8 inch piece so go down the middle. So if we sandwich these all together, we end up with a piece that will have this stripe down the back of our neck, and the total neck width is 2¼ inches. Now we will glue these up and leave them for tomorrow. We just spread the glue on. We want to make sure it's all coated and be liberal with it. I have my stack. Now we're going to clamp them together. I'm going to start with just these hand clamps. Wooden clamp presses all the way across. We've let our glue up sit overnight, and we are ready to move on to the next steps. So first we'll remove all the clamps. So we see our assembled block with our race stripe pattern. So the first thing we need to do is clean up all the glue so then we can shape our neck from this glue up. So we're back at our joiner, and we want to make our sides square. So we want our surface, that's going to be where our fingerboard attaches, square to the sides of our neck. So we'll just square it up on the joiner. Now we have this glued up blank with our nice stripe pattern out of walnut and honey locust, and now we need to mark up the shape of our neck. So our neck is going to connect to our guitar, and then we will cut out everything that's not neck. So we'll have a heel, and we'll have a tapered neck area up to our peg head that's going to angle back down. Now we need to lay it out. So if we look at this guitar, this is what example of what we're doing. So we have our heel, we're going to taper our neck to our peg head, and then we'll angle our peg head down. So you've got to get enough angle on this peg head so that your pegs are not higher than your nut, so that you can pull tension over your nut. So the first thing I'm going to want to do is cut my groove down the top where the fingerboard's going to attach for the truss rod. And the truss rod gives it extra stability. We're going to use a truss rod like this one, although a little bit shorter. This is a two-way truss rod where you crank the nut one way and it provides pressure one direction, the other way provides pressure the other direction. So we want to make a slot that this will sit down in right in the center of our neck. And it's easiest to do this while we have this big square block. We've set our table saw up to cut as deep as a truss rod, and the center of our slot will be right in the middle of our neck piece. So take your blank and the side that you want to be up against the fingerboard, that's the side you want to put the slot in, and make the cut. So we're going to cut once, and we're going to flip it all the way around and make the other cut. And then we get a perfectly centered slot. So now I have a slot that perfectly fits my truss rod. And it should be a snug fit, but not super tight fit. So I have 14.5 neck. I'm going to leave 3/4 inch for a tenon. So I'm going to mark off 3/4 inch. From that point I'm going to mark 14.5. Helps if I do it from one, because we know from the point, that's the point that we're going to connect our guitar. So 14.5. And we know after 14.5, then we're going to angle down for our peg head. The next step is going to be to cut our tenon for our where we're going to connect the guitar. So we're going to again do that on the table saw. So I've set up my table saw, so I will cut at a 3/4 inch end, or line. I'll cut at 3/4 inch, and then I'll just chip away at it. So now we've cut our tenon that will sit inside the slot we'll cut in the guitar. And now the next step is to cut our angled peg head. I'm going to cut this peg head at 10 degrees. I'm going to do that on the miter saw. So I've set my blank up in a jig here that attaches to the miter saw and holds the blank, so that I can cut this exactly 10-degree angle and very accurately. Now, where this angle stops is where the end of my fingerboard is, so I need to be very exact in my cutting. So the jig keeps my fingers safe, because if you're trying to hold a piece like this up against the fence, it's just not very safe. So the extra support of the jig is very important. So I have it all lined up, and I'm going to go ahead and cut it. Now we have our angle. We have our angle for our peg head. So now I have my tenon that will connect to the guitar, and I've cut my peg head down. Now it's very important to do these cuts before you start shaping, because once you get your your neck shape in there, you don't have nothing squared up anymore. So while it's a square blank, it's much easier to cut those pieces. So now we'll lay out the actual shape of our neck. So we're going to have a heel that's about 1 1/4. We have our tapered neck, and then we have our peg head. So I'm gonna draw the angle cut for the peg head on there also. And just mark my marks a little darker. Right now on this walnut it is very hard to see what I need to cut. So I have it marked pretty dark. So now we'll just rough cut this on the bandsaw. So after cutting on the bandsaw, we have our rough cut neck that will attach through a tenon to our guitar. Now we need to shape this neck. The first thing I want to do for shaping my neck is to taper the neck. It's wider at the base of the guitar than it is up by the nut. Now my blank is 2 1/4 inches wide, and that's how wide I want it where I'm connecting to the guitar. Down at the nut end, I only want it 1 7/8. So I want to measure 3/16 from either side and put a mark. And I want the thinnest part to be at the point where the neck transitions into the peg head. So right on that transition line, I'm going to mark 3/16 and 3/16. So now I'm going to run a straight edge, attach a straight edge from the flush with the corner across to my 3/16 inch mark. Then I will attach this to my neck with screws. I'm going to use this flush cut bit and my template. The bearing will ride right along my template, and the bit will cut out the wood. now we have our neck. It's tapered this way. We've tapered it this way. And now we'll work on rounding it and shaping it. Well, I'm going to do some rough shaping, just using my spoke shave. And then I'll move to the sanding drum on the drill press. So just going to take some of this off. Now we've shaped our neck. We have a nice smooth curve. It feels nice on your hands. We have not finished the peg head yet, and I made one mistake when I had my blank square and I cut my tenon. I didn't cut the top of the tenon off, and the tenon should not go all the way to the end. So we have one more piece of work to do on the tenon part. And it's a little more difficult now since the block is no longer square. So we want to cut the end of this tenon off. I'm just going to use just a flush cut back saw, just a tiny one, and I'm going to cut across, make sure I'm flush. Cut it down about a ½ inch. And now I'm simply going to take a chisel and pop that piece out that I just trimmed. Next step is to round this over so it'll match our U groove when we cut that in the guitar. Chipping off the corners. And shaping it into a nice smooth curve. Now we fixed our tenon. We have a nice shoulder on it, and we've rounded it over, a nice smooth round, which will match the U groove that we're going to cut in the end of the guitar. So now we're going to glue our veneer onto our peg head. And the key is to make sure that this is squared up perfectly, because your fingerboard is going to butt right up to it. So now we've let our veneer dry, and we're going to remove the clamps. So now we have a honey locust veneer on walnut, so we'll clean this up and shape it. The first thing I want to do is I want to cut down the length of my peg head, and I want this to be 7 inches. So I'm going to mark 7 inches. So now we want to taper our peg head 1/4 inch on either side. And then we're going to take our straight edge and put it flush to the corner and mark to our mark that we just made. And we'll do that on both sides. I'm going to use this block plane and remove the wood for the taper. And now we've cut both sides of our taper. Now I will finish that up with a sanding block to smooth it out. Just take a sanding block and do a final shape on it to get the nice and smooth and down. We have one last piece of shaping to do. The veneer overlaps the shape of our neck here at the thinnest part, where it curves back out wide. We need to knock those pieces off. I'm going to knock that off with this file. Careful not to change any of my profile. And then I will finish it off with a little sandpaper. So we're just very careful to keep the same profile around that curve. And then we'll do the same on the other side. Very carefully. And again, finished up with some sandpaper. So in this episode we shaped our neck. It has a nice even taper. We tapered our peg head, and we have a nice round on the back of our neck. Next time we will work on our fingerboard and attaching the neck to the body.